In this video I'm going to show you how I improved the appearance of the Gröppner Wiesel kit by eliminating the long seams that Gröppner had in their instructions, and by having the cutouts basically underneath the superstructure, which is the pilot house, the engine house back here, and the only thing that replicates the cutout that Gröppner had is underneath where the torpedo tubes are. In the original plans Gröppner had, this cutout actually came along all the way alongside the deck and came up in here and across. You can still see some lines. I originally built it that way and decided to change that later on by actually cutting that whole removable deck section right across here and cementing it down, and we'll show you how everything goes together next. A lot of the things that I put in the Gröppner Wiesel are going to be removable. For instance, the turrets will be removable with two nuts underneath. They'll be able to come off, and I'll be able to make modifications, repairs, or if something needs to be cleaned or modified, I can do it at that time. This is the rear box, accessory box probably for the weapons, that would be mounted here. And there's a little slot in the deck, and this is spring loaded, so that actually after it's bolted down into the deck, it'll actually be spring loaded and be able to slide back and forth. And that's so I can hide the part of the seam for the aft deck. Now the aft deck has the little structure that's removable. These little piece of balsa wood that I have underneath the front of the torpedo tubes basically are protecting the little handles that are on there, and when the model is finished they will be removed. Also note at this time that I did take the hard railing out and I put the mesh across like is on the original boat, and then took the hard railing that Gröppner had out of that. If you notice that this structure is removable, there's a magnet in here. It's one of those very powerful magnets that they have on that you can buy. There's two of them here, and that holds this structure down. Now the object of this structure, removable, is so that you could access the inside here to turn the little locking mechanism. Once that locking mechanism, the aft deck is put in place, you can actually get your finger in there, you can turn that, and you can tighten the screw down to pull that back up and hold this structure down, the aft deck down. And then you can replace this in here. It's got a little pin in it so it keys and sits nice and flat, nice and flush. Now the next item I'm going to assemble is going to be the engine house. And the boxes that are on the aft part of the structure basically have a screw holding them down, and there's a little piece of silicone tubing underneath there that holds the screw so it's a little bit flexible and it'll float a little bit, so when I put the deck down it'll sit flush. I also have a little spring loader. You pull it out, it's got a little pretty good tension on it, and that'll hold down the front end of the structure. So basically this will snap down into place, and then I have a little tool over here that I made that help me push it down, and then I can turn that 9 degrees or a couple of degrees. Now it's held down, and I can actually pick up that whole hull with that. The next item I'm going to be putting on is the pilot house. This is not complete at this stage. I do have the little ladders that I made for it on either side, and I have to fit those in yet and then finish out the interior of the pilot house. But right now you could actually take a look at it and see how that looks. Also the interior, I don't have the frames or the windows on or the windshields up on the top, but the inside is also well detailed. And what that is, right from the bottom I can actually put the crew in, the two men that are going to be standing in there. It has a floor plate so that when you look through the window you'll see the two men, one holding a map. Now how this one goes in, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to get two powerful magnets. I'm going to put one in the front of the structure and one on the deck, and that's going to hold the structure down. But basically this slides in. Got this little tab here that'll slide in, aligning it with the engine house, and that kind of pushes in, and we got a little fit like that, and that'll hold down pretty good once that's done. So that's how all that works. But to give you an idea how this is going to look with the radar mast, what I'm going to do is just pan up a little bit here, and I'm going to come with the radar mast assembly. And basically, the legs are canted out, as they're supposed to be, but vertically out of the flanges are the 4 pins that come down, and they have little holes in them, and that'll go down into the structure, line up like this, goes down, and there's 2 things that I have to do to get that in there, to line that up. And that's, one is going to be the ladder into the holes, and on the other side here is a little piece of duct that mates with the cabling that comes out of the antennas. Now, that will be assembled with the structure at the same time, the engine house, and this will all have its wires on it. I'll have the UHF antennas, which are not on it right now. I do have them made, but because they're fragile, I didn't want to put them on to last. And of course, the forward light. Then I'll string all of the flags down to and tie them off, and that much would be pretty much done. Plus, we'll add some more details along the way. Also, one of the things that I'm going to be going and working on after the rest of this is done, get all of the structure done, I'm going to go back and work on the deck, finish the decking out. I'm going to put the proper hatch covers. If you'll notice them across the front here of the pilot house, I'll have those, so a nice and 3D look to it rather than the molded items that Gropner had, and the 2 vents that are in here. Then I'm going to work on the turret. Another 2 things that really need to be changed are the base of the turret and the ring that's around it. This ring was really tubing with metal plates that were supported off of that, and this was all metal plates too, so it really didn't have these kind of rounded edges. This little flange that was down there, of course this is supposed to be the deck, not the inside of this thing, so that'll all have to change. And I'm going to be changing the interior of the turret as well. There's all sorts of webbing and supports that we're going across, and I'm going to change the gun, because at the time I had very little at the time I made this, I had very little information on how to make the gun. But anyway, that is to give you a little bit of a preview to how all of this goes together, and that would be screwed underneath like that. The same thing with the aft superstructure, the aft turret. A few of the other niceties that I have are the life rafts, the inflatable life raft canisters. I have the release mechanisms, and I also have the top of it painted black, which will be simulating the probably some sort of carpeting that was setting up on, or padding or non-slip pad that was set up on top of that, so they could climb up and reach the ties for the ship's dinghy. This is the front cable reel that'll go on there like that, and eventually be cemented into place, and then cable draped down somewhere. These are the toolboxes that were somewhat unique to some of the boats, the Wiesel being one of them. Some of them were located in different places, and they were different sizes. Some were a little smaller, and they were put up against the structure in a couple of different places, but the Wiesel had a fairly good sized boxes, and they were mounted inside the railing like such. And again, that's going to be a removable item that's fastened down, and then the railings will be, of course, in place here. Next, I'll give you a little preview of some of the things that I have on the ship at the current time, and it's still under construction. The aft deck is pretty much done with the torpedo tube mounts. They will be replaced at one time or severely modified to look like the correct type mounts that they had. The aft end of the engine house, the lower portion, which I refer to as the beaver tail, has a it wasn't long enough for the Wiesel, for the kit. It is significantly shorter. It should be about 1.25 inches or 1.5 inches longer. I extended it about 7/8 so I can get the 2 fire hose reels on there. In reality, there should be 4 reels. But anyway, these are not even part of the kit. They don't even, I had to research with photos and trying to make the best I could out of them, and they didn't turn out too bad. So that's those. And then above that and to the left is the exhaust stack, which Gropner did a very, very poor job on. They just had a two pieces that were molded together and did not reflect correctly what that stack looked like. And what I'm going to do is I'm just probably zoomed in a little bit too much there in the digital. But anyway, that's the wire mesh frame that's around it. And the other things that I did is I modified the boat. I put handles on the sides of the boat, the inflatable dinghy. As for the boxes on either side of the aft end of the structure, and the same thing with the one that's on that'll be behind the aft gun, which is this. I actually cut the surfaces off and put new boxes on and made some somewhat replica hinges of what was on the photographs of the actual boat. So you could see that in the video. And now I'm going to move up here past the inflatable dinghy, and then I'm going to go and show you about the shock absorbing system, which Gropner did not do a very good job in explaining. There are 6 shock absorbers to hold on to the tower for the dome, and Gropner just basically had some wire that was running through the frame and bent down, and he slipped a piece of tubing over to simulate a shock absorber. This has got the full simulation with the metal, with the plates that held everything in place, and a couple little heads with the screws. The same thing on the turret. I'm sorry, on the spars or the flange plates for the radar mast. You'll notice that I used some very small diameter hex rod, and some of it I couldn't even find, so I had to make them and put those in there, and they're on top and bottom to simulate the bolting of everything together. The other thing was the radar, the range finding. I refer to it as the pit. Was not the right shape. Instead of a U shape, it actually is more of a C shape, with the open end of the C facing toward the pilot house, and that is actually a lot larger and even set back a little further than what Gropner had. And the range finding mechanism that they had in there, which worked with the radar system, actually is, I can't find any information on it at the current time, so I made this canvas case to cover it, and only you can just see the little pedestal that's below it. Perhaps this will give you a little bit more of a closer view of what that pit looks like in there. And right in front of it, the pilot house going over to the front turret. The pilot house actually had 2 hatches going out to the flying bridge, and they were located in about this position, and it was obvious, and only actually one of the photographs that I had had to really zoom in on it, and didn't show a lot of detail, but they were approximately in that location. And as far as some of the other things that you see there, the railings and the gauges and everything, all the little instrumentation I had in there, they're just kind of made up of some items that just kind of look like they would fit there, because there was actually no definition, no photographs available of what the bridge looked like there. Another thing that I did is eliminated the use of decals wherever I could, and I made some vents, both the vents that are along side of the pilot house, there's several of them, one underneath the Wiesel name tag there, and there's one further back on the either side. It's underneath the handrail right in about the center of the picture. Also note that the name tag for the ships was not a black background with white lettering like Gropner has. Actually, it was like a medium to light blue with black lettering, and pretty much replicated what that's supposed to look like. Another change that I incorporated in the model, and again it's eliminating of the Gropner's use of decals, would be the latches on the door. I've got those pretty much like they were, and the only thing I did not put was on one side there was a little tab sticking up that you could actually put a lock on, so you could actually bolt it into one position. And of course I've got the hinges supported off the structure, and I think that adds to the realism a little bit there. conduit and so on. I got some conduit on the back, the far side, and I got this one here. Actually, I didn't line it right up when I put everything together here, and there's a little pin in there so it guides in and sits down straight and lines up. Another item that I added to the details on the ship, and that's going to be the use of some lighting that I have. There are some lights, there's one on each side, just aft of the aft door, and there'll be a couple on the pilot house as well. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull off the radar dome, and I need to release that one little duct on the one side and just lift it straight up. Normally, as I said, I'm going to have some pins through these holes that'll hold it. But I wanted to show you some of the other things that I've got on it. And there's some wiring that runs up through various places. This one runs through a junction box because there's not enough evidence of exactly where everything goes. But also I wanted to show you that down in here there's 2 screws and an alignment pin. And those 2 screws, you take that off, this whole dome will come off, and you can actually see there's screw heads in the bottom plate of the dome, so that that adds a little more realism. And I think if we can I'm going to try and get in a little closer here to give you an idea of what these shock absorbers and the mating plates for them look like. This is actually all made out of styrene rod. There's no metal in there. The only metal part of it is going to be the screws. Everything else on this part of the mast is all styrene, except that's a wood block. And then we go all the way up. This rod across here is brass that goes through with the 2 little loops on either end. Then when we get up to the top part of the mast here, this piece of round stock and the other pieces coming across it all the way up to the top, all these pieces of round stock in here are all made of brass. And again, the brass being nice and stiff, and it's put together with some gel super glue in here, and so that gives us some strength. And the rest of the mast and everything is pretty strong. And the surprisingly strong styrene, I can kind of lift this dome up and it holds in place. I did put a little box on the front that seems to appear on most of the photographs. When I scribed the circle and put some little hex heads in there, it looks like some sort of an access plate for the dome. So that's all adding to the trying to replicate the actual ship as much as possible. Alright, and then with the tool we just press that down and we can lift off the engine house. I'd like to just turn this around here for a minute and show you some of the other little details that you can do to enhance your model. Right now I've just got a piece of rope laying on the deck here, on the handrail, strung over it, and that'll be all throughout the deck. There'll be a lot of detail items that were actually, if you looked at the photographs of the Wiesels and the Zobel class boats, they had a lot of items laying around. They would actually store items underneath the dinghy up here and across the back part of the structure. They had spars and so on laying in there. So you could actually put a lot of things around. I'm going to turn this a little bit more, and I'm going to show you this duct that was on the other side that actually ran a lot of the cabling down from the radar mast. And when you put that on, the radar mast goes in like so. And once you get the holes for the ladder up the radar mast lined up, that snaps down a little further, and then you just have to move this, slightly spring loaded, and then you'll see that the cables actually run down, and then we'll simulate going down through the duct into the ship. Items I'm going to show you are maybe a little closer up view of the hose reels, the louvers that are here, the stack, and this rear antenna assembly that I grooved out and put a little flange in the bottom, a little spacer underneath that, and those little slots that are on the side. Those are all evident in photographs of the Zobel class boats. This rear flag mast, which actually is not used, actually had a little flange base on it, something like that. Another part that I custom made for my model is the box that's on the back here. I made that more like what's in the photographs, with these flanges on the side of it and the pipe coming up with some sort of control on it, which I've yet to find out what they do, but they had several of these around the ship. And lastly, I'm going to come over here to the junction box for the electrical. Now, I don't know if this was used for supplying electrical into the ship or electrical for out of the ship, to maybe for powering other equipment. But anyway, that was mounted on the side, and there was actually, it looked like there was some sort of a floating spacer behind it, so that's painted black like in the real ships. So that's pretty much it right now for where I'm at, but hopefully this will give you an insight on how well detailed you can make the Grapner Wiesel kits. Possible. So quickly, in taking this apart, basically we lift that pilot house up, it comes out, we get our little tool,